So I've already read as many books this year in just over half a year as I did in all of last year. So today I'm going to talk about the books that I've read so far, and I'm going to talk about how I have been able to carve out more time to do so. So if you're interested in reading more with the rest of this year, stay tuned. Welcome to Shoulda Books, the podcast about all the books you should have read by now. My name is Jonathan, and today I am in yet again another new studio. That's right. You can't pin me down. I can't stay in one place. I'm in a new studio. This is a proper recording booth. This is like a music studio in lovely Boston, and it's probably the best acoustic setup I've ever had. Will I still find a way to make some sort of mistake? You betcha. That's the Shoulda Books promise. But that's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about the books that I've read so far. So I have read 16 books this year. If you have been following along with this podcast, you've already heard about a good number of those because I've read them for this show. But I have also found a way to read for fun. I mean, I guess now it's technically for work because I'm talking about them, but there have been other books that I have read so far that I haven't breathed a word of in my online persona, but today we're going to talk about that. If you've been following along, you've heard about the Shoulda Book Club books. Every month we read usually a different classic book. This year we've done Jane Eyre, House of the Spirits. Right now, we're doing the Odyssey for July. If you want to follow along with the book club, you can do so over on Fable. You can find that link in the description. And if you're loving Shoulda Books and you want to support the show, consider signing up for the Shoulda Books Patreon. For $4.99 a month, you get early, ad-free, extended episodes of Shoulda Books, bonus content, and access to the Discord, where we dive into the books of the month, we dive into the books that the guests bring on, we dive into anything that we find interesting. So if you want to check that out, you can do so over at patreon.com/ShouldaBooks. The link obviously is in the description. Okay, so 16 books this year. I started things off with the first Shoulda Book Club book, which was The House of the Spirits by Isabel Allende. I am not going to spend too much time talking about this because you can check out that episode that I recorded with the lovely Sam Bacchus. And, I really, really loved this book. It's a multi-generational story about a family in South America. And it's so life-affirming in a way that doesn't feel cheap or saccharine. It tackles all of the messy, brutal parts of life. And boy, does it get messy and brutal at times, but it also shows all of the joy and the love. And it's a moving read. I was moved to tears at certain times. I was I don't know. I wouldn't say I laughed out loud. It's very rare for me to laugh out loud at a book, but I did the kind of every now and then. So it's great. You should check it out. If you haven't listened to the episode about it, go check that out as well. Okay, book number 2, Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. This book, I did the audiobook version and John Green read it. So it felt like, listening to an extended podcast with him. And I found this book extremely fascinating, also very disheartening. It's about the disease that has really shaped modernity. It's shaped our world in so many ways that I had no idea. He talks about kind of the average person's understanding of tuberculosis, and I realized I had that understanding. This idea that, okay, this was an awful disease that seemed to mainly affect, the heroes of romantic stories from the 19th century. And that's not the case at all. It did affect those people, for sure, but it's a disease that very much is still active. It still kills. I forget the number off the top of my head, but I think it's like 1 million people every year. It's horrendous, and it's very treatable. It's very treatable. That's why it's, if you're listening to this podcast, chances are you probably don't have it and you probably don't know anyone who has had it. But in large parts of the world, especially in the global south, tuberculosis is still very much a killer. It's very much part of people's lives. It's very much something that ends people's lives. And the reason that it hasn't been fully eradicated is, yeah, you guessed it, good old fucking capitalism. It's not profitable for the drugs to be distributed to the people who need them the most. And so this book will definitely make you angry. It made me very angry. If you want to contribute, if you want to find out more about how you can help with tuberculosis in 2026, you can find some links in the description. The book itself, it's John Green. It's intensely readable, or in my case, listenable. I listened to this mostly while I was out jogging. You should check it out. Book number 3 was The Disappointment by Scott Broker. This is another book I won't spend too much time talking about because Scott was a guest on this podcast. He is such a wonderful person to talk to. I really enjoyed my conversation with him, and I really enjoyed his book. His book is about a married couple who go on a vacation to the Oregon coast, and they're both dealing with grief. One of the husbands is dealing with the loss of his mother. The other husband is dealing with the loss of his career. He is a playwright, and he's decided he's not going to write plays anymore. And he is mourning that loss, and he's navigating all of the complex emotions that come with, comparing his grief to his partner's grief. And it's a well-observed, very funny, and at times charmingly surreal book. And I highly recommend it. I also highly recommend you check out the episode that I did with Scott. He was a wonderful guest. Book number 4 is Lost Lambs by Madeline Cash. I don't know if you have been following the discourse with this book, but it is interesting. And I will get into that discourse, that gossip, if you will, in a minute. But let's talk about the book itself first. I enjoyed it. This was another audiobook for me. The narrator did a fantastic job of capturing this wide range of characters. The book follows a family in a fictional seaside town as each of the members of the family kind of succumb to the 21st century in different ways. So we have one character who kind of gets sucked into conspiracy theories. We have another one who kind of gets pulled into basically an Epstein-style kind of situation. There's a lot going on here. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fucking funny. Like, it's just, this is a book that I was listening to the audiobook. I was running around the neighborhood and I was laughing out loud. This was making me laugh out loud. So I think that this book has a lot of interesting themes. I think that it ends up kind of stopping short of really, I don't know, saying anything other than just like, oh, look, the internet's kind of melting all of our brains, which, is valid. I think that, I liked it. I enjoyed it. Is it my favorite book I've ever read? No, but it's really fun. And the discourse around it is, it's kind of beyond the scope of this, but there's a lot of talk about how Madeline Cash has kind of become this literary it girl, even though the book hasn't sold that well. Like, she's doing brand deals for Gap. She's like a brand ambassador for them. People are wondering, like, is this some sort of psyop? Is she a secret Nepo baby? Is she an industry plant? I don't know. I mean, I think that she's probably a savvy networker. I think she's someone who, did a good job of meeting the right people and working those connections. And that is the state of any sort of artistic endeavor in 2026. So I enjoyed this book. I don't think it necessarily deserves all of the hype. And I don't think Cash deserves all of the hate that she's gotten. It's worth checking out, but I think don't take it too seriously. Okay, book number 5 is Speak Now by Ash Perez. I had Ash on the show, and so if you want to hear my interview with him. Go check that out. This was a lovely rom-com that is exclusively an audiobook. It's an audio, it's almost like a play. Like it's performed by a cast of characters and by a great cast. They do fantastic work bringing these characters to life. It's a queer love story about a chef who reconnects with her former best friend slash person she had a crush on. And now as adults, they reconnect and a love triangle ensues. And it's really fun. It's very heartfelt. It's very sweet. It's kind of a throwback and a love letter to classic rom-coms like of the 90s. You should check it out and check out the episode that I did with Ash where we talk about it. Okay, number 6 is Jane Eyre. This was the February book for the Shoulda Book Club. It was Bronte month. It was a big deal. I made so much content about the Brontes that month, which you can obviously check out. I liked Jane Eyre. I thought it was, I liked it a lot more than I thought I was going to. It's a classic. Jane is a fantastic protagonist. She's an original. She is someone you really want to root for. It's a classic for a reason. Check it out. Keeping things rolling with the Shoulda Book Club, number 7 is The Outsiders by S.E. Hinton. This was the March Shoulda Book Club book. And I have talked about The Outsiders so much on this show, I shan't say another word other than I liked it. Number 8 is Downtime by Andrew Martin. Andrew was a guest on this show. He, prior to being on this show, was one of my favorite writers. And the good news is he is still one of my favorite writers. It's always scary to meet your heroes, but I really enjoyed talking to him. Downtime is a novel set in COVID, which sounds like a turnoff, but it's actually really good. It's about a group of friends who are, navigating both obviously COVID, but also their own progression into middle age, which I found very relatable, I must say, which I've always found with Martin's work. He is a spot-on, razor-sharp chronicler of the overeducated and underemployed, which is a milieu that I always love reading about. And this book, like all of his books, is wickedly funny, and it goes down smooth. And it also holds up a mirror in a way that sometimes makes me uncomfortable for myself. I see myself sometimes too much in his writing in ways that aren't always flattering. And so I always look forward, but also kind of like dread on how I'm going to be read to filth, as they say. And this book was no exception. Okay, number 9 is The Crying of Lot 49 by Thomas Pynchon. So Pynchon is one of those authors that I have tried to get into before. I tried to read Gravity's Rainbow years ago and couldn't do it. The main reason why is because Gravity's Rainbow in particular has some depictions of child molestation that were awful. I did not want to read them, but I picked up Lot 49 because I really enjoyed watching One Battle After Another, which is based on a different Pynchon book. And so I was like, I feel like I should read some Pynchon. I feel like he is one of those authors that I just should bite the bullet and do it. This is his shortest book by far. And I read it. And the biggest thing that I took away from it is that I get why so many things are inspired by Pynchon, why so many books, so many TV shows and movies often get described as Pynchon-esque, because the puzzle nature of this story, which I'm not even really going to try to describe the plot because it's so incredibly intricate for such a small book, but suffice it to say that it involves secret societies and hidden coded messages and paranoia of every stripe. And so it has inspired a lot of things that I really like. For instance, the show Lodge 49, I mean, it takes its title from the number of the book. But Lost Lambs, honestly, is, to bring it back to that, is probably takes some of its DNA from Crying of Lot 49. I didn't enjoy the book itself, though. I liked what it was doing, but I just I don't know. I like call me old fashioned. I like to connect with characters, and there's really no one to connect here to because the characters are so two dimensional. Like by design, they are because they are just kind of in the way of like when you watch a Wes Anderson movie, it kind of feels like watching a kid play with their dolls. That's kind of what reading this book felt like. It felt like watching somebody just kind of manipulate their puppets in a way that was intellectually interesting but emotionally unsatisfying. The best way that I can describe reading this book is that it felt like watching someone ride a jet ski, where I can watch someone ride a jet ski and think, damn, that looks really fun. But it's not fun. It's fun for me to imagine myself riding a jet ski and then going and riding a jet ski. So I think that like that's why so many things are inspired by Pynchon's his whole shtick. Because like it's really fun to read a story like this and be like, oh man, what if I created this really intricate puzzle of like secret societies and hidden knowledge and gnosis and things like that, and then go out and execute that versus like actually reading it. I didn't really enjoy it. Okay, number 10 is A Good Person by Kirsten King. Kirsten was a guest on this podcast, and I really enjoyed her book. I won't say much more about it because I talk about it in the episode, but it's twisted, it's sick, it's got one of the best anti-heroes that I've come across in a long time in the character of Lillian. It's about this woman who gets dumped by her situationship, and she decides to put like an Etsy curse on him, and then he ends up dying the next day. And so she gets pulled into the investigation and is a suspect. And it's so readable. It's so like you can't tear your eyes away from the train wreck of this person's psyche. It's a blast. Go check it out. Okay, number 11 is Giovanni's Room by James Baldwin. This was a book that was recommended by one of our guests, MJ Smith, all the way back in one of the early episodes. I had read Go Tell It on the Mountain by Baldwin before, and I'm a big fan of the clips of his speaking that pop up on my Instagram. But I've been wanting to read more James Baldwin, and I got the audiobook for Giovanni's Room. God damn. It follows a young man in Paris who is kind of avoiding his fiance. He ends up starting a romance with a bartender named Giovanni. This book was beautiful. It was heartbreaking. It was repulsive in some ways because the main character does such repulsive things. He treats people so terribly. But you understand where he's coming from. It doesn't justify what he does, but you do get why he's doing it. And Baldwin just, God, sentence to sentence, he might be one of the best. Like his words just dance across the page, or in this case, through my ears. This was narrated by Matt Bomer, who did a phenomenal job. This is not a book that will make you feel good, but it will make you feel. So check out Giovanni's Room. Number 12 is another Shoulda book. This was Never Let Me Go by Kazuo Ishiguro. I did a whole video on this, so I won't say too much about it, but I did enjoy it. It's not a happy book, but I'm happy to have read it. Number 13 is Kill Dick by Luke Goebel. So Luke is going to be on an episode of Shoulda Books coming out very soon, and this book is so prickly. This book has some of the sharpest edges of anything that I have read recently. This book feels like, those stories about like Halloween where they say that, people will put razor blades in like a Snickers bar. This feels like biting into a Snickers bar that has a razor blade in it. Like there is so much that is like pleasing about it from an aesthetic level. Like it's just kind of fucking cool, but it has so much like venom. It has so much rage, justifiable rage, I must say, because this book ultimately is about the opioid crisis. It's about this young woman who kind of gets caught up in this possibly Pynchon-esque web of murder and deceit. and Lies. It's very Pynchonesque. What am I talking about? Yeah, this is very much inspired by that milieu. But all of the various ins and outs and what have yous, to quote the Big Lebowski, all of that kind of centers around the Sickler family, which is a stand-in for the Sackler family, which is the family that is perhaps single-handedly responsible for the opioid crisis in America that has killed so many hundreds of thousands of people. So this is a book that is like filled with rage, but I think it's rage directed at the right thing. So stay tuned for my interview with Luke. I'll talk about the book a little bit more. It's not necessarily a book that I would recommend for everyone, but if you're on its wavelength, I think you'll enjoy it. 14 is The Kite Runner. This was another Shoulda book. This was a book I did another episode on, so you can check that out. I liked it, but I had some major caveats with it. Number 15 is Pachinko, the most recent book club book. Another book that I liked, but had some caveats about, and you can check out that episode. Now, the last book that I want to talk about is the one that is probably in the thumbnail, and we have finally gotten to it. That is Yesteryear by Carol Claire Burke. This is probably the book of the year. This is the book that has had the most think pieces about it. It has sold incredibly well. It's been at the top of the bestseller list for a while. There's so much discourse about this book. It's hard to like talk about just the book and not about the conversation about it. So I'll just talk about the book, and I'll start by saying I fucking loved this book. I really, really enjoyed this book on several different levels. The first level is that I related to some of the characters in the book a lot in regards to content creation. I related to the character of Shannon specifically a lot. I won't say more than that, but I just will say I related to Shannon quite a bit. Now, this book, if you haven't heard about this book, it's about a trad wife influencer who all of a sudden wakes up in the 1850s one day. Going into this book, I was like, I don't know about this premise. It sounds a little kind of like, you know, those body swap movies. Like, it sounds kind of cheesy, kind of hokey, but everyone's talking about this book. I'll check it out. And I will say, for a good portion of the book, I was frustrated because I was more interested in the story that was going on before she wakes up in 1855 or whatever. I was like, this story of this woman coming from an evangelical background, which, you know, if you're not familiar with the show, is a big part of my background, and coming from that world and then transitioning into making content and becoming an internet celebrity. I was very invested in that world and in that story. And then in the like flashbacks to the olden days, I was kind of like, okay, can we get back to the story that I was really interested in? But without saying anything further, I get why she did that, and I think it absolutely pays off. So it does get a little kind of slow in there a little bit because it feels, I don't know, the middle of the book starts to feel a little bit repetitive. But like I said, it where it ends up going is a place that I didn't see. I didn't foresee it going in that direction, and it delivers on the premise so well. As a man, there's probably only so much of it that I can really speak to and relate with. But even still, like, it really, it speaks to the moment that we're all living in, regardless of who we are. I think that it also speaks to the, like, a phenomenon that has been talked about a lot before that I've been really fascinated with, which is, why are evangelical Christians and Mormons, I'll put those two together because I feel like they share a lot of DNA. Specifically, they're just very American. Why do those religions, why are they so overrepresented in like influencer culture? And the observation that Carol Claire Burke makes is that if you grow up in that culture, and especially if you grow up as a woman in that culture, you are taught to act as if you are being watched at all times, that you are under constant surveillance. And so if that is the world you're starting from, it's very, very easy to transition into a career on the internet where you are being watched at all times. Like you already have the software, you're already running that software, just point it in a different direction. I thought that was so smart. I thought that was so accurate. And the book is filled with observations like that. And so I think you should absolutely check it out. And if you hate it, like some people do, I think, hey, that makes sense. I get it. But I don't think you can deny that she has put her finger on the pulse in a way that is very exciting. And you don't always get, it doesn't always happen that there's a book this on the money each year. So the habits that I've changed to be able to read more this year than I did last year, I've already talked about one of those habits quite a bit, which is audiobooks. I was not an audiobook fan. I at one point was under the misguided thought that audiobooks don't count as reading. That was my take a long time ago, and it was wrong. It's the wrong take to have because it's ableist, frankly, to say that folks who can't read a physical paper book, to say that the experience they're having is not reading. Like that's ignorant. That's wrong. I also saw something recently that basically the regardless of how the words are input into your brain, whether it's visual or it's oral, is that the right word? Auditory? Let me know in the comments. Regardless of how they get into your brain, they get processed in the same place. So like whether it's coming through your eyes or through your ears, they're going to the same distribution center. So like in terms of brain chemistry, it's literally the same thing. So anyway, all that to say, I changed my mind on audiobooks. And then this year I was like, you know what? Let me give them a shot. Turns out I love them. I really enjoy them. And I was worried that, if I listen to an audiobook, I won't be able to remember it as well. And maybe to a certain extent, I don't remember it as well. Like for the book club books, I tend to read those in physical form, but not always in physical form, which I'll talk about in just a second. But I found that I can still recall enough. I can recall quite a bit. It's been a great way to fill time, like on driving or running, and I really enjoy it. So that is one habit that I've changed that has helped me read more. The other habit that I've changed too is I've gotten an e-reader on my phone. Now, my friend Julian recommended this a while ago, and I was like, Julian, you're crazy. Why would you do that? And his argument was that, like, if you're going to be looking at your phone, why not be reading a book? And so I gave it a try. And look, it's not the best way to read a book by any means, but it is better if you're going to be looking at your phone, whether you're, in line at the grocery store or you are in the waiting room at the dentist office. Like, if you're gonna blow 5 to 7 minutes just like looking at whatever, why not spend that time on a book? I also have been able to read in bed in a way that, I don't have to worry about having a light. I don't have to worry about like rustling pages and waking up my girlfriend. Like, I find that like it's a really handy tool that has helped me read more. If you have any other tips or tricks or tactics that you use to read more, let me know. I would love to know about them. If you've read any of these books that I've talked about, I would love to hear your takes on them. If you're a pension head and you want to come at me, go for it. I would love to have that discussion. And if any of the episodes that I mentioned sound interesting and you haven't checked them out, go check them out. And that is going to do it for this episode. Thank you all for watching and for listening. And as always, keep reading.